So, um, imagine you wake up tomorrow morning, right? And this unprecedented anomaly has occurred.
Okay, I'm with you.
Every single digital server, every hard drive, every cloud network, and literally every printed book on the face of the earth has just been instantly vaporized.
Wow. Total wipeout.
Exactly. I mean, the absolute entirety of recorded human legislation, um, secular philosophy, institutional memory is just all gone.
Just completely erased.
Yeah. So as humanity steps out of its doors into this, sudden, profound silence, this terrifying question kind of arises.
Which is what actually survives.
Right. What foundational laws of society possess the inherent unyielding capacity to basically rebuild themselves from the ground up? And, what vanishes forever just because it was nothing more than an artificial human fiction?
I mean, that falsification test is, well, it isolates the precise structural vulnerability we are examining
It
today.
really does.
Because when you strip away the institutional enforcement mechanisms, the courts, the digital records, the physical archives, you are left only with the immutable constants of reality.
Right. The stuff that doesn't need a hard drive to exist.
Exactly. If a legal or philosophical framework cannot autonomously regenerate from the fundamental laws of nature, it possesses zero intrinsic authority. I mean, it is just a manufactured construct.
Well, welcome to the deep dive. Today, we are taking a really hard empirical look at the invisible architecture of our world.
And you, the listener, are the subject of this systemic audit today.
Yeah, you are, because our mission is to execute a rigorous mathematical and structural cross-examination of global governance frameworks.
We are fundamentally evaluating the core mechanics of civilization,
Yeah.
contrasting the fixed constants of absolute reality against, well, the shifting engineered variables of secular constructs.
Exactly. And to establish the absolute anchor for this analysis, the primary directive requires the complete verbatim recitation of the Charter of Logic.
Right, the foundational document.
Yeah, so I'm going to read the source document now exactly as it's written.
Go ahead.
Moral, spiritual, sexual freedom in the name of rational thinking. That is, there is no God, idol, or Allah except country, state, flag, God, idol. The age of Surah is the age of Dajjal. The age of Dajjal is the age of godless world. The age of the godless world is the age of non-existence of Allah. The age of non-existence of Allah is the age of non-religious God. The age of non-religious gods is the age of non-religious god idols. The age of non-religious god idols is the age of Watan. The age of Watan is the age of Riba, slavery. The age of Riba is the shirk of sovereignty, Surah Kaf, ayat 26. The age of Surah Kaf 26, shirk, is the age of legislation in the name of the country, state, flag, god, idol.
Okay.
The reason legislation is in the name of country, state, flag, idol is because the Quran cannot be amended. Hence, the age of the Dajjal, where appearance and reality are opposite. Satanic ideology of godless world of one-eyed Dini secularism. Dini secularism is the most ruthless, lethal, deadliest one-eyed Deen of godless world ever to exist on the face of planet Earth.
So, the foundational tension extracted directly from this charter is, I mean, it's entirely structural and mechanical.
It is. It's not just theory.
No, not at all. It identifies a systematic, deliberate bypassing of unamendable divine constants. And observe that this bypass is not categorized as some, theoretical abstraction or a mere academic divergence.
Right.
It is an operational mechanism.
Yeah.
And it's achieved through the literal, physical, and legal construction of the country, state, flag, god, idol.
Which is a heavy concept, but we're going to break that down completely.
Exactly, because the parameters for our analysis dictate that we must test the mathematical and empirical validity of these competing frameworks.
We're really auditing whether a manufactured artificial legal system actually possesses the kinetic capacity to override natural law.
Or if it just constitutes a mathematical and structural failure from the very beginning.
Right. So to conduct an audit of this magnitude, we really must first delineate the baseline parameters,
We need definitions.
Exactly. We need to clearly define the strict demarcation between what is a self-executing law of nature and what is just a human assumption. So for clarity, when we establish Dini Filtrat, Dini Islam as the operational baseline, we are not speaking about a localized cultural tradition here, are we?
No.
Or some subjective belief system, correct?
Correct. I mean, the data explicitly does not categorize it as a subjective variable.
Right.
As referenced in Quran 30.3 Dini Fitrat, Dini Islam is an absolute physical fact. It is the inherent, unyielding law of the cosmos.
It's the physics of reality, essentially.
Yes, to understand this, you just have to observe the operational reality uniformly across all domains.
Mm.
Mother Nature possesses an inherent, unalterable drive toward maximum efficiency, zero waste, absolute unity.
Yeah, and we verify this physical behavior all the way down at the subatomic level.
Exactly. Particles do not hold a consensus on how to behave. They don't vote.
They really don't.
They adhere strictly to thermodynamic constants to eliminate friction.
So we are observing a scaling mechanism here. The same mathematical rigor that governs subatomic efficiency basically scales upward into human biological and social structures.
It's the exact same logic. True laws, whether they govern gravitational attraction, thermodynamic entropy, or, absolute objective morality, they are self-executing constants.
They don't need us to agree on them.
They require zero human consensus, they do not need democratic validation, and they certainly do not wait for legislative approval to function flawlessly across the canvas of existence.
They simply are.
Right. If you step off a ledge, gravity executes its parameter regardless of your personal philosophy regarding falling.
You're going to fall.
You're going to fall. And Dini Fitrat, Din Islam, operates with that exact same inescapable, self-executing authority across the entire spectrum of human social dynamics.
Conversely, though, we really must scrutinize the shifting variables that are engineered by secular philosophies.
The human assumptions.
Right. Because human desires, subjective opinions, majoritarian decrees, they are fundamentally unstable. I mean, they change based on geography, the era, economic conditions.
Entirely reactionary.
Yeah. They clearly lack the structural weight required to alter a cosmic constant, which brings us to a primary mathematical vulnerability in secular systems, which the data identifies as the addition error.
This is a crucial concept.
But I need you to challenge this mathematically for a second. If a nation of, say, 100 million people votes on a constitutional amendment, how does that equate to zero authority? Walk me through the mechanics of that equation.
Okay, so the addition error exposes a fatal logical contradiction at the very core of democratic sovereignty. And we prove it by applying what we call the zero authority principle.
Okay, break that down.
Let's isolate one human being, just one. We must ask, does this single individual possess the inherent natural authority to alter the laws of the universe?
Obviously not.
Right. Can this one person legislate an exemption to gravity or, alter the absolute moral parameters of Dini Fitratinese Islam?
The objective answer is no. A single human has absolutely no jurisdiction over natural constants.
Precisely. In mathematical terms, that individual's authority to rewrite cosmic law is exactly zero.
Zero.
So the mathematical proof of the addition error is unyielding. 0 plus 0 equals 0.
Wow, yeah.
If you aggregate 1 million or even 1 billion individuals into a democratic consensus, you are merely aggregating zeros.
You've widened the base, but you haven't changed the fundamental value.
Yeah, exactly. You just have a very wide base of zeros. It is mathematically and logically impossible for a collective to delegate an asset, in this case, absolute legislative sovereignty that no individual naturally possesses to begin with.
That is a critical mechanical distinction. I mean, a collective cannot magically generate a new category of authority simply by increasing the volume of participants.
It's a total illusion.
Yeah, the synthesis of this baseline parameter is absolute. Attempting to bypass the fixed constants of Din Fitrat, Din Islam through collective human legislation is a systemic engineering failure.
It's broken by design.
It is the mechanical equivalent of placing a cart before a horse, removing the horse entirely, and then just passing a law mandating that the cart must propel itself.
Which is absurd.
It is. The failure is not ideological, it is kinetic. Such an action instantly detaches a society from objective reality, basically transitioning it fully into the domain of myth, as strictly defined in Quran 10.32.
Which naturally forces our audit to confront the next logical question.
Right.
If secular law possesses exactly zero inherent authority, and if it is structurally incapable of overriding natural constants, how did it successfully trap human reasoning within a closed material loop?
How did we get here?
Exactly. How was this manufactured authority constructed, and why on earth did humanity accept it?
Right.
The data requires us to trace the historical engineering process. We really must map the lineage of specific architects who are classified in our analysis as the storyteller philosophers.
The architects of the illusion.
Yes. These individuals engineered a make-believe chain to systematically bypass unamendable scripture.
So let's actually look at how this shift happened in history. Because bypassing Dini Fitrat, Dini Islam was not an overnight event.
No, it took centuries.
It required a prolonged, multi-century intellectual operation. We begin our cross-examination in the 17th century with René Descartes.
Ah, Descartes.
Yeah. The data shows Descartes introduced a mechanical split into human perception. He divided reality into a soulless physical machine, the material world, and a human-centric starting point of cognition.
Famously summarized as, I think, therefore I am.
Exactly. So how did this philosophical split functionally impact the legal and social architecture of the time?
Well, Descartes basically performed a surgical severing of human reason from divine consequence.
Okay, unpack that.
Before Descartes, the operational assumption of civilization was that human intellect was just a subset of divine order. You observed nature to understand the creator's intent.
Right, nature was the textbook.
Exactly. But Descartes flipped the axis entirely. By making human cognition the foundational starting point of certainty, he relegated the physical universe to dead matter that's just waiting to be mastered by us.
So we become the masters instead of the observers.
Right. This is the first link in the make-believe chain.
Yeah.
It told humanity, your internal logic is the primary absolute, and the external world is just raw material.
So Descartes builds the foundation by isolating the human mind from natural law.
Yes.
Then we see David Hume escalate this architecture in the 18th century by enforcing what is known as the is-ought split.
A massive turning point.
Huge. Hume argued that just because something is a certain way in nature, you cannot inherently deduce how humans ought to behave based on that physical fact.
Right.
This seems to be the exact moment morality was entirely severed from objective reality.
That is exactly the mechanism. I mean, Hume reduced absolute objective causation to mere psychological habit.
A habit.
Yeah. If you observe the sun rising every day, Hume argued that you cannot logically prove it will rise tomorrow. It is just a habit of your mind to expect it.
Which is an insane level of skepticism when you really think about it.
It is. And by applying this extreme skepticism to causality, Hume systematically pathologized the human mind's natural recognition of divine design.
He broke the censor.
He tried to, yes, because the core of Fitrat is the inherent logical recognition of a designer when observing a design.
Of course.
Hume's framework attempts to short-circuit that recognition. He argued that objective design is an illusion, thereby isolating human morality in a vacuum where the state can eventually dictate the ought.
Because if nature doesn't dictate what we ought to do, somebody has to.
Exactly. The state steps into that vacuum.
Wow. And this intellectual trajectory clearly required a biological mechanism to sustain it, right? Because if the universe is not designed, and if morality is totally unmoored from nature, how do you explain the complex engineering of human life?
You need a new creation story.
Exactly. Charles Darwin provided this missing component by introducing a closed biological loop. Darwinian theory essentially substituted the reality of intentional divine engineering with the concept of random genetic mutation filtered purely by environmental survival.
And Darwin's framework is absolutely crucial to the algorithmic flow of the myth.
How so? Mechanically speaking.
It trapped the definition of human life inside a godless, mechanistic cycle. Think about it. If human beings are merely the temporary result of random atomic collisions and survival pressures, then humans possess no inherent, divinely granted sanctity.
You're just biology.
You are no longer a creation with a fixed purpose under Dini Fitrat, Dini Islam. You are a biological accident.
And accidents don't have absolute rights.
Exactly. This removes the ultimate barrier to systemic state control. If humans are accidents, their laws are accidents, and therefore, whichever group of humans can assert power is completely justified in rewriting the rules of existence.
That makes right, basically.
Yes.
So as we progress into the 19th and 20th centuries, the systemic scale of this myth expands from just biology to aggressive social engineering.
It becomes weaponized.
It really does. We encounter figures like George Bernard Shaw and the Fabian socialists. They didn't just passively accept this godless universe, they actively sought to manage it.
They wanted to steer the ship.
Yeah. They substituted the concept of absolute divine revelation with an engineered secular concept called the life force. They asserted that since evolution was blind, human elite the bureaucrats and intellectuals must step in to manually guide human evolution and morality through highly centralized statecraft.
Yes, the Fabian mechanism transitioned the philosophical myth into a literal operational bureaucracy.
It became government policy.
Right. But to seal the narrative completely, The storytellers needed to conquer the macro universe itself. They couldn't leave astrophysics alone.
They had to claim the cosmos.
Exactly. And the ultimate mathematical error in this lineage was formalized by modern cosmologists, most notably Stephen Hawking.
Oh, this is fascinating.
Hawking assigned independent creative agency to descriptive physical laws. He famously asserted that because a law such as gravity exists, the universe can and will create itself from nothing.
Okay, I really want to pause on Hawking's assertion because the logical error here is just profound.
It's glaring.
It seems to be a fundamental confusion of categories. A law of gravity is a description of how matter behaves, but a description cannot create the matter itself.
Your analysis is exactly correct. It is a fatal mathematical and philosophical category error.
Yeah.
Hawking basically confused the descriptive rules of the physical canvas with the creator of the canvas.
Right.
To use an analogy, the rules of a mathematical equation can describe how numbers interact, but the rules themselves cannot summon ink and paper into existence.
They're just the rules.
Yes. By claiming gravity could create the universe, secular science mathematically attempted to replace the creator with the very forces the creator designed.
It's completely circular logic.
Entirely.
Concurrently, we see the sociological dimension of this myth really cemented by modern public intellectuals like Yuval Noah Harari.
Oh, yes. Harari is very open about this.
He is. Harari openly reduces fundamental human rights, constitutional frameworks, and divine laws to what he terms intersubjective fictions.
Fictions.
Yeah, he explicitly states these are just useful lies myths that only have power because the human herd agrees to believe in them simultaneously.
And you see, Harari's concept of the intersubjective fiction is actually a stunning admission.
It really is. He's saying the quiet part out loud.
Yes, it is an open confession from their own side that the secular matrix is entirely imaginary.
Wow.
But we must understand how this imaginary matrix transitions into structural control, because it doesn't just stay in books.
Right, it governs our lives.
To enforce these philosophical myths onto a global population,
Right.
the predator elite utilized a highly specific operational transmission gear. We call it the Hegelian dialectic.
Okay.
We must cross-examine how this engine functions in real-time governance.
Let's do it, because I want to make sure I have this concept completely locked in. When we talk about the Hegelian dialectic, are we basically saying that power structures intentionally manufacture a problem on the left side of the spectrum and simultaneously manufacture a conflicting problem on the right side of the spectrum solely so they can offer a pre-planned, centralized solution right in the middle?
That is the exact mechanical translation.
Okay.
Hegel's mechanism manufactures controlled systemic conflict or herd populations into predetermined enclosures.
It's a trap.
It introduces a thesis. For example, it'll fund and promote Marxist collectivism or Fabian bureaucratic control. This thesis mandates total state ownership of the individual, arguing that the collective is paramount.
Right.
Simultaneously, the system fosters the antithesis Nietzschean individualism, or radical hypercapitalism.
The opposite extreme.
Exactly. This antithesis elevates base desires, the ego and material consumption into a sovereign god, arguing that the individual owes absolutely nothing to anyone.
So the population is literally forced to choose between being a slave to the state bureaucracy or a slave to their own unchecked biological desires. Yeah. And the programmed collision of this thesis and antithesis produces the intended synthesis.
Precisely.
The system steps in and says, well, we must compromise to maintain order. And that synthesis is Dean E. secularism.
There it is.
This synthesis seamlessly merges corporate infrastructure, national identities, and individual moral anarchy under a highly centralized, heavily militarized state apparatus.
It absorbs both extremes.
Yeah. And within this apparatus, no absolute law of Dini Fichet Dini's Islam is ever permitted to serve as the ultimate operational authority.
And the clinical enforcement of this synthesis is brutally aggressive. I mean, it does not tolerate noncompliance.
Not at all.
We audit the institutional policing of this mindset by examining the architects of secular education. Consider Dr. Paul Brandwein, a leading 20th century figure in educational psychology and curriculum design.
Okay.
Brandwein explicitly stated in his frameworks that every child who believes in God is mentally ill.
Hold on, wait. A leading influential educational psychologist actually encoded that into formal academic literature.
He absolutely did.
How was that justified medically or scientifically?
It wasn't. It was not justified by objective empirical science at all.
Wow.
It functions entirely as systemic psychological machinery designed specifically to protect the secular idol. Brandwein and his contemporaries recognized that the human baseline naturally aligns with the absolute truth of a creator.
It's hardwired into us.
Yes. Therefore, they had to surgically pathologize the inherent human alignment with Dini Fitrat Dini Islam.
They had to make sanity look like insanity.
Exactly. If acknowledging natural cosmic law is formally diagnosed as a mental illness, then the state achieves unquestioning reliance on its own matrix. The state basically becomes the sole arbiter of sanity.
That is chilling. But, in strict contrast to this destructive lineage of myth, the data presents the structural alignment identified by Dr. Muhammad Iqbal.
A brilliant analytical mind.
Truly, Iqbal provided a highly precise diagnostic of Western civilization. He observed that the West successfully mastered the physical hardware of acquired knowledge.
The mechanics.
Yeah, the realms of empirical science, statecraft procedure, logistical networks, and technical efficiency. And Iqbal explicitly noted that the inner core of this technical success actually operates on purely Quranic scientific discipline.
Yes, the math works.
Right. The failure of the West was not in the hardware itself. The failure was in applying this magnificent hardware to an ideology of myth.
It's like putting a state-of-the-art engine into a paper airplane.
Exactly. Dr. Iqbal's framework mandates a systemic return to Dini hack. He defines this as a system of universal social justice that is so operationally precise, so tightly integrated with the laws of nature, that even a dog should not die of thirst within its jurisdiction.
That's the ultimate benchmark.
It is. Establishing this system is not a matter of passive theological belief. It is a rigorous, demanding technical task.
Highly technical.
It requires the precise, unyielding application of acquired knowledge to establish uncompromising social justice. And this absolute justice serves as the mandatory baseline. I mean, it must be fully operational before any Sharia protections and deterrents can be legitimately enforced.
Right.
You cannot punish a starving man for theft if the system itself caused his starvation by hoarding resources against the laws of nature.
That would be a systemic contradiction.
Exactly. So having exposed the psychological engineering and the philosophical lineage utilized by the storytellers, our audit now shifts to the literal physical machinery required to enforce their fictions in reality.
The actual structures.
Yes. We must return to the absolute anger established in the Charter of Logic to unpack the algorithmic flow of systemic shirk. This mechanism relies on a highly integrated architecture, which the data calls the Trinity of Dini secularism.
And this is where the mechanics become very visible, because human logic cannot naturally or mathematically claim absolute sovereignty over the cosmos, as we proved earlier with the addition error. An artificial multi-tiered apparatus must be constructed to mask this deficiency.
They have to build a machine to hide the lie.
Exactly. The first tier of this architecture is the state. The state operates functionally as the false god.
Okay.
However, the state is an intangible, invisible legal abstraction. You cannot touch a state. You cannot converse with a state. Yet it is artificially crowned with ultimate sovereign authority over life, death, and resources.
It's a ghost that demands obedience.
Yes.
Which brings us to the second tier of this trinity. The Constitution.
The text.
Right. The Constitution functions structurally as the holy book of this secular idol. Our structural audit identifies a critical legal vacuum at this tier. According to the foundational parameters of a valid objective contract explicitly referenced in Quran 2.282 and 17.34, an agreement must be mutually witnessed, objectively fair, and verifiably consented to by living participants.
That's basic contract law.
Yes. But a secular constitution fails this fundamental test. We identify it as fundamentally an unsigned document drafted by deceased founders, forced upon a living population who never provided verifiable individual consent.
We really must pause to analyze why an inherited unsigned contract is legally absurd from an objective structural standpoint.
Please do.
In literally any other domain of contract law, you cannot be bound by an agreement signed centuries ago by individuals you never met regarding property you do not own, utilizing terms you were forbidden to alter without the consent of the ruling elite.
It would be thrown out of court immediately.
Instantly. Yet the secular matrix demands absolute subservience to this document, treating it as immutable sacred text, precisely because the state lacks any actual organic authority. The Constitution attempts to freeze the myth in time.
Which brings us to the third tier, arguably the most crucial mechanical component of the entire algorithmic flow, the country-state flag god idol.
The anchor point.
Exactly, because an intangible legal abstraction like the state cannot be seen or touched. right? And an unsigned document drafted by dead men cannot independently command physical reference.
No, we can't.
Human psychology, which has been so heavily engineered by the storytellers, demands a material focal point.
Hmm.
Therefore, a piece of fabric is designated as the country state flag god idol.
And this is not a metaphor.
No.
This non-living symbol becomes the literal material recipient of the population's worship, allegiance, and ultimate loyalty. Structurally, you must understand that the country-state flag god idol serves the exact same legal, psychological, and mechanical function as a carved stone statue did in ancient civilizations.
It's identical.
It is identical. The material has changed from stone to fabric, but the systemic function remains unchanged. It is an artificially constructed object designated to receive the transferred sovereignty that humans do not naturally possess.
It's the ultimate projection.
And the final tier in this algorithmic flow is the taku.
The mouthpiece.
Right. Since a piece of fabric, the country-state flag god idol is fundamentally inanimate and silent, it requires a mouthpiece. It needs someone to speak for it.
Otherwise, it's just cloth on a pole.
Exactly.
Ah.
Politicians, parliaments, prime ministers, and legislative bodies step into this role. They act as the high priests and the voice of the country-state flag god idol.
Mm.
They utilize its manufactured projected authority to pass draconian legislation that operates in direct hostile violation of the self-executing constants of Dini Fitrat, Dini Islam.
And a primary example provided in our data is the legalization and systemic enforcement of riba, or usury.
Right. We'll get to Riba in a second, but first, we must critically examine the historical logical realignment of this mechanism of idolatry.
Yes, let's look at the history.
Consider the historical governance model known as the divine rights of kings. In that model, the state and the church were functionally united under a singular monarch who claimed to operate as the direct proxy of the divine.
The king spoke for God. Exactly. But the so-called secular revolution of the Enlightenment did not dismantle this mechanism of absolute control. It merely rebranded it.
That is a crucial insight. I mean, they didn't break the wheel, they just repainted it.
Exactly. By separating the state and the church, the mechanism was mathematically re-engineered as the divine rights of people through the process of democracy.
But structurally, both models are identical mechanisms attempting to manufacture absolute authority from mathematical zeros.
Yep.
The monarch claimed authority from a silent sky. The parliament claims authority from the silent masses. Neither possesses the inherent right to overwrite natural constants.
And Dr. Iqbal addressed this exact systemic trap through his concept of wataniyat, defining nationalism as a highly destructive political myth.
It's a geographical cage.
Yes. Iqbal identified this geographic categorization as the Azar of civilization. For the listener, Azar was the father of Abraham, famously known as the master idol carver.
A powerful metaphor.
Iqbal is stating that modern nationalism is the ultimate idol carver. It takes the universal, integrated spiritual unity of humanity and violently fragments it into competitive, artificial geographical loops.
Borders.
And these borders are designed specifically to choke, isolate, and terminate the eternal constants of Din-i Fitrat, Din-i Islam.
But the necessary operational counterdirective to this violent fragmentation is the structural adoption of Mustafavi.
Which is what?
Mustafavi represents the universal, indivisible spiritual identity of mankind. It natively, logically, and physically transcends all artificial borders, nationalist enclosures, and cartographic divisions drawn by the Taku.
It ignores the lines on the map.
Entirely. Mustafavi does not recognize the arbitrary lines drawn on a map by dead politicians. It re-anchors human operation exclusively to the unyielding universal gravity of cosmic truth, synchronizing the human sphere with the operational perfection of the universe.
Wow. But an audit of this magnitude cannot rely on theoretical proofs alone, right? It requires empirical verification.
We have to test it in reality.
We do. We have demonstrated that the secular machinery is structurally defective and philosophically bankrupt at its core. But we must now test what its failure looks like when subjected to the actual physical friction of reality.
We apply our systemic litmus tests.
Right, beginning with the airplane metaphor. Let's play along with this scenario for a moment. If we are on a commercial flight, cruising at 30,000 feet, the parameters of our survival are completely non-negotiable.
The construction and operation of that advanced aircraft are derived strictly from the unalterable laws of aerodynamics.
You can't debate them.
No, the laws of drag, lift, thrust, and gravity are absolute. You cannot convene a democratic parliament in the cabin of that aircraft to vote on modifying the parameters of gravity just because the passengers find gravity inconvenient.
We demand less gravity.
It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
It does not matter if 100% of the passengers vote to suspend aerodynamics.
Right.
If you ignore the laws of physics to satisfy majoritarian preference, the aircraft suffers a catastrophic structural collapse and plummets to the earth.
And human society is governed by identical, unyielding mechanical rules.
It is the same physics.
Attempting to override the foundational parameters of Din-e Fitrat, Din-e Islam via popular vote, parliamentary decree, or the mandate of the country-state flag god idol inevitably results in systemic societal collapse.
Every single time.
You just cannot vote against the physics of morality and expect society to remain airborne.
You can't. And this societal collapse is empirically observable through the real-time feedback loop detailed in Quran 30.41, which identifies the outbreak of fasad.
Fasad. Let's talk about that.
Fasad manifests structurally as systemic chaos, massive ecological degradation, and acute, uncontrollable economic inflation.
Basically everything we see on the news today.
Exactly. And the crucial analytical point here is that fasad is not an arbitrary mystical punishment sent from the heavens.
It's not magic.
It is the direct, inescapable physical friction generated when conflicting standard operating procedures are forced upon a population.
So when a parliament passes a law in the name of the country-state flag god idol that actually contradicts nature, it is literally grinding the gears of society against the gears of the universe.
Precisely. It is the inevitable result of enacting legislation that directly opposes the harmonic efficiency of natural law.
Friction causes heat, heat causes fire.
Yes. And we observe this extreme friction explicitly in the Riba and currency challenges.
Okay, let's get into the currency aspect.
We challenge the secular system to execute interest-based banking without the artificial, heavily militarized protective mask of the nation-state.
It is structurally impossible.
Let's examine why.
Because fiat currency, which is manipulated through usury and printed endlessly by central banks, operates completely divorced from intrinsic reality.
It's paper, or digits on a screen.
It is a pure illusion. True economic equilibrium demands what the data identifies as Sunnah money currency, pegged strictly to commodities with intrinsic, naturally occurring, God-given value, such as gold or silver.
Actual mass and matter.
Right. Fiat money, which is engineered out of nothing by human decree, is mathematically haram. It exists solely because the state enforces its use through violence and coercion via the taqat.
And if the state machinery fails, the fiat currency instantly reverts to its true mathematical value.
Which is zero.
Exactly zero. Which brings us back to the ultimate falsification test introduced at the beginning of our deep dive, the burning of books.
The ultimate stress test.
Yes. We pose this catastrophic scenario to the data. If a global reset occurred tonight, completely vaporizing every digital server, physical archive, and printed book on Earth, what structural realities would autonomously survive and regenerate?
And this is where Yuval Noah Harari, whom we identified earlier as a primary architect of the modern secular narrative, provides the confession that completely validates our audit.
It's the ultimate concession.
He concedes that if humanity lost its physical records and institutions, we would have to invent entirely new intersubjective fictions to coordinate mass cooperation.
Because the old ones would be gone.
Exactly. The works of John Locke, Charles Darwin, Stephen Hawking, and Harari himself would be permanently vaporized.
They possess exactly zero inherent retrieval capacity because they were entirely artificial. They do not exist in the fabric of the cosmos.
Right.
Under this ultimate stress test, our data proves that only 3 realities are automatically retrieved and regenerated from the canvas of existence.
What are they?
First, the Quran, due to its flawless distributed preservation with imperfect human memory, existing entirely independent of physical infrastructure.
It's stored in the human mind.
Yes. Second, science. Because the unchangeable physical layout of the cosmos, the periodic table, and absolute thermodynamic laws will always reassert themselves perfectly.
Gravity doesn't forget how to work.
Exactly. And third, statecraft, functioning strictly as the natural mathematical law of operational unity and organized hierarchy.
Therefore, the data proves conclusively that only Din-e Fitrat, Din-e Islam, possesses a retrieved, fully operational reality.
It's the only system that survives the deletion of human memory.
Wow. These empirical tests just systematically shatter the secular framework.
They leave it with nothing.
So the audit is now obligated to provide the official structural resolution to completely dismantle this systemic shirk. We arrive at the mandatory closing instructions for this analysis.
And the resolution requires a precise constitutional blueprint. The establishment of true caliphate demands the absolute, uncompromising separation of eternal divine principles from temporal statecraft and localized working policies.
We have to separate them.
We dictate the architecture of this resolution as follows. Constitution Part 1 is immutable.
Okay.
It consists exclusively of the Quran and Sunnah. It is mathematically fixed and subject to absolutely no human edits, amendments, or legislative voting by any parliament or Taqut.
So that's the fixed cosmic law. Constitution Part 2, then, is adaptable.
Yes.
It comprises the mechanics of statecraft and localized working policies, traffic laws, zoning regulations, technological protocols.
The day-to-day operations.
Right. These operational protocols must change with time, technological advancement, and resource availability, but they must remain strictly, eternally, and mechanically subordinate to the immutable parameters of Part 1.
We now issue the official audit note on structural shirk. Under conventional secular models, laws and operational procedures are incorrectly, illegally, and disastrously executed in the name of a country-state flag god idol.
That's the core error.
Yes. The text of Surah Kaf, verse 26, establishes absolutely that the Creator does not let anyone share in his command.
It's an absolute monopoly on sovereignty.
Yes. Granting legislative sovereignty to state symbols and pieces of inanimate fabric creates a counterfeit authority.
It does.
By mechanically separating adaptable working policy from eternal divine principles, we systematically dismantle this structural shirk. This separation logically, legally, and effectively removes the country-state flag god idol from the equation of human governance.
It eliminates the idol entirely. It unplugs it.
To solidify this resolution, we must execute the technical elaboration of Surah Fusilat, verse 53.
Okay, let's break that verse down.
The verse states, "We will show them our signs in the universe and in their own selves until it becomes manifest to them that this is the haq."
Hack, meaning absolute truth.
Yes. This declaration provides the ultimate internal proof of our entire audit. It transforms the external mechanics of the macro-universe and the internal logic of human composition into an empirical laboratory designed specifically to prove absolute truth.
Let's synthesize this structural flowchart based on that verse, because this ties everything together.
Go ahead.
First, we examine the signs in the universe representing external mechanics. It is an unyielding law of physics that a shadow requires a physical object to exist, right?
Yes, you cannot cast a shadow with nothing.
Exactly. Correspondingly, a counterfeit law requires a counterfeit creator to authorize it. In order to legislate against the perfection of Dini Fitrat Dini Islam, artificial states are forced by the uncompromising laws of structural mechanics to construct the physical country-state flag god idol.
It's a structural necessity for them.
Right. The idol is the requisite material object casting the dark shadow of fake law.
Second, we examine the signs in their own selves, representing internal logic. We return to the delegation paradox we proved earlier.
The addition error.
Exactly. We have mathematically established that an individual human being naturally possesses zero inherent right to authorize laws that defy natural constants.
Right.
To bypass this hard-coded lack of natural authority, humans are forced to engineer an internal psychological fiction.
The fiction of the state.
They invest the illusion of sovereign authority into an inanimate, institutional state idol, projecting outward onto fabric the power they subconsciously know they lack internally.
So our audit definitively verifies the blueprint. The sequence we have mapped today, beginning with the artificial construction of the country-state flag god idol, channeled forcefully through the mouthpiece of the Taqut, and resulting in the destructive production of fake law, is not a mere theological debate.
It's not a matter of opinion.
No. It is an unalterable, clinically observable mechanical law of nature that acts as a 360-degree litmus test for human survival.
If you mathematically subtract the artificial country-state flag god idol from the sequence, the entire counterfeit system of secular governance collapses instantly.
It falls apart.
False legislation possesses zero kinetic capacity to exist without a false god authorizing it. The final verdict of this technical cross-examination is absolute.
It is.
The unavoidable collapse of secular structures when tested against natural constants, combined with the unmatchable, self-executing perfection of inherent cosmic law, serves as definitive empirical evidence. The existence of Allah is a mathematically and structurally demonstrable fact.
Wow. So, as you close this file and navigate the global systems tomorrow, look critically at the invisible architecture surrounding you.
Read the fine print of reality.
Yeah. Examine every legal document you sign, every institutional mandate you are ordered to follow, and every economic policy governing your labor. Ask yourself the ultimate diagnostic question. Are you obeying the unyielding objective gravity of the cosmos, or are you bowing to a piece of fabric desperately pretending to be gravity?